anymore. We need our rights. We will not stay at home anymore looking like glamorous slaves. We need our equality. Inequality is wrong.
Excuse me, ma'am, you're causing a public disturbance.
You're a disturbance.
If you don't come down, I'm gonna have to arrest you.
That's easy for you to say. You have a job. You get a huge salary. I need to pay for my family. Sexual harassment. I will not stand for sexual harassment anymore.
Alright, listen, you think you're all so high and mighty because you couldn't arrest us. No, just because you have a job and you use our daughters
Gender
as a sex
equality.
No, ma'am, you need to calm
and
down.
if you actually were like respected us, you would have a happy life and have a happy marriage.
Okay.
But you know.
Alrighty. Okay.
This film is an attempt at portraying the Canadian feminist movement from the 1960s to 1970s. Since the late 1800s, Canadian women have been fighting to obtain gender equality. They were faced with many oppressive setbacks, including little to no job opportunities, unequal wages for equal work, sexual harassment, exploitation and pornography, and restricted access to abortion. The footage shown previously was of two Canadian women protesting the patriarchal domination of Canadian society, coupled with the brutality of the police force. Although some women were afraid, others quickly took action by forming health centers, feminist magazines, daycare centers, shelters for abused women, rape crisis centers, and even illegal abortion centers. But what was it that sparked this sudden wave of feminism in Canada? Before the 1960s, Canadian feminists were divided mainly among two groups, maternal and equal rights feminists. Maternal feminists, under the influence of Neely McClung, organized moral crusades for social reform based upon their roles as mothers of the nation, while equal rights feminists, under the leadership of Dr. Emily Howard Stowe and Flora MacDonald Dennison, promoted women's equality with men. The feminist movements of the 60s and 70s were greatly influenced by these ideologies of the past, but largely began due to the Second World War. Once Canada became fully involved in World War II, Canadian women began volunteering to contribute to the war effort. Actually, both Canadian and American women became involved in their country's workforce at the time. Common positions acquired by women during the 1940s included mainly factory and office jobs. This new type of responsibility gave females as a whole an awareness about their potential in the workforce. Many women decided to even join the army. In fact, by the end of the war, over 20,000 Canadian women were members of the army, more than 16,000 were members of the Air Force, and nearly 7,000 were members of the Navy. When women were first recruited, they mainly worked in administrative and support positions such as stewardesses and clerical aides, but as the war progressed, women were promoted to more skilled positions such as mechanics and electricians. Once the war ended, however, all the men and women who had been abroad returned to Canada, and the government expected the women to return to their homes so that the men may resume their previous jobs. This frustrated many of the Canadian women because they enjoyed the responsibility of going to work and earning a salary. The Canadian government established in 1943 a subcommittee to deal with issues women could encounter after the war. This subcommittee was headed by women who recommended improvements that could be made for other women, including ideas such that women should be trained for jobs just as men, or that household workers should receive labor benefits like unemployment insurance. However, the reports made by the subcommittee received little public attention and ultimately failed to achieve any of its recommendations. This angered many Canadian women because they did not want to return to traditional female roles. In the years following the war, the number of women in the workforce continued to increase despite government and male resistance. Union feminism emerged as female contribution to the economy became more vital, gaining women a place in Canada's politics as they demanded changes to be made and began to organize themselves to try to accomplish their visions of equality. One of the most controversial topics feminists discussed was abortion. In 1969, abortion was legalized under the Canadian Criminal Code under the circumstances that the mother's health is at risk, the process is carried out by licensed physicians, and that the abortion is approved by the therapeutic abortion committees. In 1968, the Vancouver Women's Caucus was established. This organization demanded the entire removal of the abortion from the Canadian Criminal Code, taking action to publicize their views by holding demonstrations, mainly involving picketing and rallying. In 1970, a cross-country abortion caravan was organized from Vancouver to Ottawa that called for increased reproductive freedom through increased access to abortion and birth control. This is Emma Roy. She is one of the many who went to the United States to have an abortion performed.
And they weren't going to let me
they were going to look at me the same way. If I got an abortion, I would be condemned to hell, as they would say, and my family would never look at me the same way again. So in the middle of the night, I snuck out of my house and with my feet closed, and I got to the train station. I previously heard about legal abortions in the United States, and the train leaving immediately was to Chicago. Yeah, so these trained laywomen created this abortion counseling service of Chicago's Women Liberation Union for women like me. It was underground service, and the women were really supportive, and it was a quick job, and it was super cheap to get the abortion, so that's how I did it.
So your parents never suspected a thing?
They did, but I had to lie, of course. I mean, I wasn't going to tell them that I had an abortion. But after a while, I finally admitted to them that I had to fend for myself.
Would you encourage women to get illegal abortions if needed?
I would only agree with it in some situations. Performing legal abortion is unsafe, and some women have ended up in hospitals and have caught infections and all the other stuff. Women nowadays are allowed to do a lot of things. As women of this country, I believe that we should have our own rights and do what we want with our own bodies. I just really want everyone to know that they should never feel restrained to do anything, especially if it has to do with your own body.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
The reason why so many feminists were so passionate about abortion restrictions was because many Canadian women were dying from trying to perform illegal abortions in unsanitary conditions with amateur doctors or by crossing borders to the U.S.
What else did the Canadian feminists rally for, and how did they accomplish their goals? In the late 1960s, the women's liberation movement involved many younger activists who were also involved in other movements, such as those for peace, health, safety, native rights, and the New Left. Most of these young women chose to remain independent of political parties and largely included student and socialist feminist groups. They organized themselves into small conscientious raising groups working for access to abortion, birth control, and daycare. They also created alternative feminist organizations such as rape crisis centers, shelters, women's centers, bookstores, counseling services, and feminist cultural and artistic alternatives. Many of the other women's rights organizations took largely in the political side of achieving their goals and tried to affiliate themselves with the government so that they could achieve equality under the law. This diversity among women's perspectives on female rights and feminism in general compelled us to go to a local university to get a perspective of the feminist movement from a female Canadian student.
Oh yeah, there's some of those girls in my school. Well, they're an interesting bunch.
What do you think about their ideas?
Well, I think they're quite brave, eh? To stand up to such powerful men, that takes guts. As for what they're doing, I don't know. Definitely better tactics than them ladies down in America. In America, the women use exaggerated and tacky tactics to express their point of view, like the bra burning, the freedom trash cans, and the Miss America protests. I mean, I understand they're trying to protest for their rights, but I believe they would be more efficient in achieving equality if they started from the law, not from the streets. Here in Canada, we've made so much progress through political action, while in America, they can't stop bickering amongst themselves to effectively organize themselves into committees and such.
But wouldn't you say that feminists in America have made progress as well? Also, not all Canadian feminists are strictly political tactics in trying to achieve equality. Not all feminists agree with each other.
Yeah, that's true. I would still say, however, that because many of our Canadian feminist organizations work together to accomplish their political goals under groups such as the National Action Committee, Canada can be considered more successful than the United States in their feminist movement because they achieve more equality under the law through acts and such.
Interesting perspective. But would you consider yourself a feminist?
I guess, for certain things. I couldn't choose what I was born as, but I reckon I can choose what I want to be, and when I'm blocked from that goal just because of who I am anatomically, I think that's pretty unfair. I think that I'm a Canadian just like anyone else, and I think I have just as much right to my own choice as anyone else. I think women are angry because we've always gotten the short end of the stick. I believe in the right of each of us to live as we see fit without constraint by outdated ideologies. And if that makes me a feminist, then so be it.
Thank you, miss.
Thank you. Oh, Angela Gardner. Hey. Hey, what's this for anyway?
It's for our documentary, Canada's Movements, Women's Rights from 1960s to 1970s.
Alright, groovy. Good luck. Please tell me a bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Betty Friedan. I'm visiting Canada from the United States.
How would you compare your role in society in the mid-20th century to that of today?
Well, I guess I used to believe that my duty as a woman was to stay at home and care for my family, but I always felt restless. I began to wonder if other women felt the same way, if they felt doomed to remain a subservient wife forever. I mean, I still love my husband Carl and our children, but I wanted to be more than a housewife. I decided to survey other women on this matter and discovered that many other American women felt the same desire for something more. After this, I published The Feminine Mystique in 1963, encouraging women to break traditional gender roles. After this, I became an active feminist and consider myself one to this very day.
How would you compare your experiences in the U.S. as a feminist to the movement in Canada?
I've noticed that overall, both movements aimed for similar things such as equal wages, elimination of sexual harassment, and more choice and access to abortion. I remember that in both the US and Canada, women could have birth control pills by the 1970s. Also, just as my book influenced the second wave of US feminism, there were many Canadian feminist authors such as Shulamith Firestone, whose works had a huge motivation for Canadian women to stand up for their rights. I believe that many Canadian women read books by American feminists as well. We wrote about the relationship between man and woman and about how society has turned it into one of domination and oppression.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello. If you could work somewhere, where would you work?
I would like to be a doctor of some sorts.
Why?
I feel like helping out people would be really great.
Don't you already help out at home, though?
Well, don't you think that that's kind of sexist to say? Can't my husband stay at home and help?
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello.
Hi.
What is your opinion on abortion in Canada?
I think it's stupid. I think that if you have a child, you should carry it to full term, not kill it, because it's a human being.
Oh, ma'am, are you married?
Happily.
And what is your name?
Margaret Schlafly.
Margaret Schlafly, you say, eh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, ma'am.
Yeah, whatever.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello. I was wondering, what is your opinion on the sexual harassment in Canada, or is there sexual harassment?
Of course there is. Every time I walk down a street, there's a man calling me down.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, I can't really say anything. I'm a woman.
Do you consider yourself a feminist?
Of course not. Daddy says they're bra-burning weirdos.
Well, thank you so much for your time, ma'am.
Thank you. Excuse me, ma'am? Excuse me. Do you mind telling me your opinion on whether, in the past 10 years, which has been more successful, Canadian feminists or American feminists?
Well, in America, I feel like it was more of a struggle than in Canada, and like people went more chaotic over that. And then you had the civil rights movement. Canadians, we don't care about moose.
Are you Canadian, ma'am?
Yes.
Ma'am! Ma'am!
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm walking.
Okay, anyways. So, what's your view on women having access to birth control?
I think women should absolutely have access to birth control.
And why would you say that?
Because it's our body. If we don't want to have babies, then we shouldn't have babies. You feel?
Not really, but okay. Thank you!
You're welcome.
Okay. Don't look like that. Don't look like that. Look at yourself.
Way too high up. Let me.
I'm so sorry, kid.
Go.
Okay.
Run. Go. Move. Run.
Wait, come so we can see your belly. Run so we can see your belly.
Straight at the camera. Run straight at the camera.
Yeah. Run to me. Run to me. Where do I put that though?
In the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. If you could work, where would you work?
At a medical center.
Okay, wait, restart.
I want to redo my part. Mine was bad.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
How do you feel about the sexual harassment in Canada?
Oh God, do I know about that? Every time I walk past my street, there's always some man calling me down.
Really? Are you a feminist, ma'am?
Oh, well, I wouldn't consider myself a feminist. Daddy says I shouldn't be.
How old are you? Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello. I was wondering, what is your take on abortion in Canada?
I think it's stupid. I think if you have a child, you should carry it through, not kill it.
Oh, are you married, ma'am?
Happily.
And what is your name?
Oh my god.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello.
Hi.
I was wondering, what is your opinion on abortion in Canada?
I think it's stupid. I think if you're pregnant, you should carry it to full term, not kill it, because it's a human being.
Oh, are you married, ma'am?
Happily. Hello, ma'am. Ma'am.
Hello.
Hi. What's your view on women allowed to have access to birth control?
I think they should absolutely have access to birth control.
Why would you say that?
Because, one, it's our body. We should be able to do whatever we want, and if we don't want to have babies, then that's our problem. Yeah.
Thank you for your time, ma'am. Thanks for laughing. Oh my gosh. Ready, set, go. Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am.
I'm walking.
Yeah, can you stop for a second so I can ask you a question?
What?
What's your view on of women having access to birth control?
Your hair's gotten longer.
That was terrible.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I don't see what the point of this is, but okay.